Dylan, do me a favor. Pass this back. What does libido mean? When people talk about libido, what are they referring to? Nobody knows, really? Nobody knows what libido means. Not even in the same like arena. Okay. Libido has to do with your level of sexual desire, which is tied in obviously to your attraction to something, right? So when he's talking about libido for the ugly. Normally, if you have a strong libido for something, that means that it's something that you're attracted to, right? So if you have like a healthy libido, that means you're attracted to whatever you're attracted to, right? Obviously, you would think that it would be something pretty, right? A woman or a handsome male or whatever it is, right? Libido for the ugly in and of itself is setting up the kind of the juxtaposition in which we're dealing with here. If you look at how he describes towns, because I'm not speaking of mere filth. One expects streets, steel towns to be dirty. What I allude to is the unbroken and agonizing ugliness, the sheer revolting monstrousness of every house in sight, from East Liberty to Greensburg, a distance of 25 miles, traveling across the United States. He's noticing the architecture, homes themselves, the towns in America, how they are just inherently ugly, right? They're not pretty houses. You know, if you look at towns in England, or old houses in England that were made out of like stone 400 years ago. People live in homes in England and all throughout Europe that are like 400 or 500 years old, right? I mean, does that happen in America? No. I mean, America's not even 500 years old in the first place, let alone the houses that were built back whenever America was first founded. So what you've got, as he goes throughout this essay, I just highlighted some of the sensory details here. When it is new, it is the color of a fried egg. Is that something that you want to associate with a house? No. And fried eggs are what color? Well, they're kind of off-white, depending on how well you can cook a fried egg. But they're kind of off-white, and then, you know, kind of alludes like off-white and yellow kind of smeared together. Now, white houses are really pretty, right? You can have a very pretty white house. I don't know if you can have a pretty yellow house, but you can definitely have like a cute yellow house. But neither of which would you describe as a fried egg. Here. Then why didn't these foreigners set up similar abominations in the countries that they came from? You will in fact find nothing in the sort of Europe, and perhaps save more future parts of England. The peasants, however poor, somehow managed to make themselves graceful and charming habitations, even in Spain. But in the American village, in the small town, the pull is always towards ugliness. And in that Westmoreland valley, it has been yielded with great eagerness, holding upon passion. It is incredible that the mere ignorant should have achieved such a masterpiece of horror. On certain levels of the American race, indeed, there seems to be a positive libido for the ugly. As on other and less Christian levels, there is a libido for the beautiful. Okay. The honest folk of Westmoreland County, and especially 100% of Americans among them, actually admire the houses they live in and are proud of them. For the same money, they could vastly better ones, but they prefer the ones that they've got. Here's something that psychologists have so far neglected: the love of ugliness for its own sake, the lust to make the world intolerable. Its inhabitants is the United States. Out of the melting pot emerges a race which hates beauty as it hates truth. Okay. So what you've got here, his overarching idea has nothing to do with. He starts off with a simple premise, because this is a way of using description in an essay that is multi-layered, right? It's not about just describing, one of the easy examples that we looked at last class was looking at like the scene of a traffic jam, right? And you could talk about, if you're going to describe the traffic jam, you could actually just describe the scene, what the drivers in the car around you were doing, what the fog or the smog was like, right? And then how that works with sensory details. You could describe what the smog looked like, right? You could just describe what the smog smelled like. You could describe what the smog felt like on your skin, right? If you're in the middle of traffic, right, 100 cars all around you, and it's hot, you have the windows rolled down or whatever, like you can feel the dirt on your skin. What the smog like tastes like, right? You can describe the smog with all of those different senses, right? You can do the same thing with the drivers that are around you. What are their actions? What are they doing? What do they look like? Not only like their physical characteristics, like big nose, small nose, blonde hair, black hair, white skin, dark skin, whatever. Not only that, right? But what do they look like? What is their overall attitude, right? Are their knuckles white because they're grasping the steering wheel as hard as they can to just try to release something because they're stuck in traffic, right? Or their necks all corded up and bulging out, right? And they have bulging veins coming out of the forehead because they're so frustrated. Or the one guy that's beside you that's got his eyes like beet red and he's almost about to pass out because he had to get high to deal with the traffic. And so he's zoning out, right? You can describe those things as well. The other element that you could describe, we looked at the drivers, we looked at the smog, and then I talked about just the background noise, the grind of the noise, and all of that around. Okay, so what does it sound like? What does that noise sound like? Screeching brakes, slowly screeching brakes. What does that make you feel, right? Does it is it like fingers on a chalkboard? Whenever you have fingers on a chalkboard, what does that do, right? For me, fingers on a chalkboard are like squeaking brakes, especially if I'm in the middle of traffic, right? I got my windows rolled down. I just turn off my car because I'm like, I'm not going anywhere and I don't want to waste gas. I'll just turn off my car and have the windows rolled down, and then an 18-wheeler pulls up beside me, the brakes start to squeak. Like that makes like the muscles in the back of my ear kind of like tense up and the hair on my arm raise. What does that physically do to you? What emotions does that make you feel, right? You can describe that whole scene, right? So if you're going to write an essay about that, you could use description, and then that would be the whole essay, really, is just describing that scene. You can also use description in a much more nuanced way, which is, if you go with your narrative, right? If you're telling a story, rather than just describing a scene, you're telling a story. You can use description, obviously, to enhance a story. You can use description to help layer a story. This essay, The Libido for the Ugly. Now this, again, we have these essays because they're like 2 or 3 pages long, right? They are not something for you that's like going to change your whole world and make you see the world completely differently. This is not like a philosophy class where you're reading super weighty material or really dense literature. 2 or 3 pages long, right? They're perfect little examples of how these things can enhance an essay. So if I'm talking about libido for the ugly, in and of the title itself, right, that means that I have an affinity, like almost at a, can you help who you're attracted to? No, life would be a lot easier if you could, right? You can't help who you're attracted to, right? that's a biological impulse that's tied into your libido, right? And so what he's talking about here is, one, whenever you're talking about like libido, it has to do with attraction. We can't really understand. There's a lot about attraction that we don't really understand. But it goes beyond here, right? Like if I said, not all the people like I like ugly girls, right? I like ugly chicks. That really turns me on, right? I have libido for the ugly. You're kind of, which is weird because they're not ugly to you, right? Because you're attracted to that thing, and that's something that you like, unless you just hate yourself, and so you want to be attracted to ugly things. But here he's using an obvious kind of a sexual metaphor, which is always is always provocative for a title, unless it's not too cliche. One of the things that you want to focus on whenever you start to develop your essays is you want to write titles that tie in to your essay but that are also not provocative for the sake of being provocative, but are engaging and that draw the reader's attention. Right? I saw a lot of people, you'll get this back in your notes. There are a lot of people that turned in like your narrative essay, and the title was just narrative essay, or it was just essay one, right? And that doesn't tell me anything. I don't really care about that whatsoever, right? The vast majority, novels that come out, right? Like, is it just book one, my first book, my 10th book? No, the titles are important, right? And your title shows an overall tying into whatever the subject you're writing about, right? And it helps engage the audience. So if you look at something like this, I had this libido for the attraction to the ugly. And it ties into there's a sexual metaphor there, which obviously has nothing to do with actual sex whatsoever, but it's there. It's just that little bitty thing, right? And you want to make sure that you don't want your title to be extremely provocative and just ridiculous for no reason. I got my bachelor's. I went to A&M, and A&M was huge. At the time, it was the second largest school in Texas. Now it's the largest school in Texas, being Ross Report. Huge school. So I had to go. Many of my lecture-based classes were in true auditoriums. It was 500 people, like theater style, semi-curved stadium style or theater style seats. The professor had to wear the portable microphone and all that stuff. He was just a little speck down there when I was up here. And I had a psychology professor, and she came in. It was the first day of class, and you get 500 people anywhere besides a movie theater. Even in a movie theater, you don't have 500 people in a movie theater, but you get a lot of people in something like that. It's hard to have an actual quiet audience, let alone 18, 19, 20-year-olds on their the first week of school, right? Even just a few people mumbling to each other becomes a dull roar if it's you multiply that by a few hundred. So first day of class, the psychology professor comes in, doesn't really say much. Not a lot of people are really paying attention to her. Those of us that are paying attention to her kind of get frustrated because is she saying anything? What's going on? She hooks up her microphone, and before she says anything, she gets up to the podium and just at the top of her lungs with the microphone on, just yells sex, and then it's 500 18 to 20-year-olds. Where I want to see. I want to know what's going on. Now I'm interested, right? Someone yells sex, and looking for it. So, problem is my name is Dr. So-and-so. This class says da-da-da-da-da-da. She never talked about sex again, which was really disappointing to 500 people because we were hoping that she would, right? Because you can't just say sex and then not talk about it again. I'm not going to say sex and my name's Seb. I've got a wife and 2 kids, and da-da-da-da-da, right? Doesn't you're therefore distracted. If the title of the thing that's going to grab your attention doesn't tie in to the rest of your message, I'll never forget her though, and I'll never forget how frustrated I was. Not so much that I wanted to hear it, because she was not the type of person I would really want to hear someone talk about sex in particular. But it was just never resolved. Why would you do that? Obviously she did it to get our attention, but then throughout the rest of the hour-long class, what are me and everybody else thinking? Are they paying attention to her whatsoever about what she's really saying? No, she's when's she gonna talk about sex? I want to know where this is going. That's all that we were thinking. That's all that anybody else thought. To this day, I still remember that because it was so pointless. And I felt betrayed. I was really? I'm that much of a caveman that's what gets my attention, and that's all I'm thinking about now. But I was 18 years old. I was very much a caveman. So you want your titles to be engaging. You want them to be semi-provocative. You want to draw the reader's attention in, but you also want to make sure that it actually ties to the story that you're writing. This actually does, right? So we're talking about libido for the ugly, alluding to a sexual attraction, but it's really about an attraction and an affinity to something. And so, what he does is he describes American towns and American houses, right, as something that is unattractive, not filthy, but ugly, right? He even talks about steel towns, things like that. You expect to be a little dirty because of pollution and whatnot. But but American towns and American architecture, they're not ugly. They're not filthy. It's not that they're dirty. It's that they're ugly, and it's a conscious choice. You drive across the United States, and then you'll see, you can kind of see this continuous thing of just kind of ugliness. And if you look at it, and not really, I mean, and he's not really being super judgmental here. Just kind of begging the question, why? Why do we have an affinity for those for those things? Is it kind of a manifestation of other things, right? Like your house is supposed to be somewhere where you feel comfortable. That you know, most people need their house to kind of like speak to them to some degree, right? If you're out and you can go buy a house, you want to feel comfortable in that house, and you want it to kind of reflect a little bit of who you are, so that you therefore, you know, you feel comfortable, right? If you go and you buy a house that's like super modern, and it's all white on the inside, and it's got a white, like, you know, tiger rug or white, like a polar bear rug, and you know, it's just sharp corners, and there's no warmth about the house. There's no wood in the house. It's all tile and concrete, and that's it. That's a very particular type of person that would buy that house. Not everybody would feel comfortable in that house. So your house does say a lot about you. And one of the interesting things about, if you look at home ownership in America, and actually I know this very well because of the other industry that I have. How often do people remodel their houses? Like it's a fairly common thing for people to remodel their homes, to build homes, and then sell that home, and then move up to another home, and then instead of just buying a lived-in home, building a new home. If you go look at a lot of new additions, because there's new additions all around, you know, here that are always popping up. Those homes look like the very same homes. People always want to build their homes, right? They want to customize their home. But, and you guys, I don't expect you guys to know this yet, because you're still living with somebody, hopefully, you're not homeowners yet. But they go, like, most of the time, people don't really design their home. They don't really, you know, spend money on an architect. They'll pick like a pre-made home in the first place. And they're all really just variations of the same kind of home anyway. If you go on Realtor or Trulia or Zillow, you'll have these things that are like they're computer-generated images of homes. And it's called like the Rebecca, the Sandy, the Charleston, whatever. They're always like, you got females, women's names. And the homes are like, they're nearly identical to one another, but they're just enough off to make you wonder what the difference is, right? Like, there's just something just a little bit different. But they all look the same, and in 20 years they won't look good, and in 40 years they'll definitely not look good. There's a particular style, like a postmodern style in the United States of American architecture, that people are kind of going back to, but by and large, right? We build what's current and what's trendy at the time, and then in 15 or 20 years, it no longer looks good, right? And that is something that if you look at that, and then you look at the idea of what beauty is and what art is that it's supposed to be timeless. And architecture in and of itself is an art, right? Architecture is an artful pursuit that if it's good and if it's beautiful, it is a timeless structure, just like paintings are timeless paintings. Songs are timeless songs. Like, you know, is anybody going to be listening to Katy Perry in 40 years? No, don't say yes. No, they're not. You shouldn't have anything to say. You shouldn't have anything to say that Christina. I was going to say Christina Applegate. What's the other one? It always does that. Yeah, Christina Aguilera. Christina Aguilera. She has an amazing voice. She doesn't have anything to say. Right? She has nothing to say whatsoever. Just like the Backstreet Boys didn't have anything else to say that New Kids on the Block didn't say in the 80s. That like One Direction doesn't have to say anything now. Right? They're reincarnations of the same crap. Nothing. They're not timeless, right? And that's fine. They're bubblegum pop. They're supposed to go away. Thank God. But the thing is that if you go back and start whenever you become, you could probably start doing this now. If you look at the type of person that, there is a particular type of person, when you go back and you look at their photographs, whenever you're a kid, you're at the whim, like in the mercy of your parents, how you look. But once you're able to start buying your own clothes and choosing your own style, if there is at any point in time that you're able, that on a regular basis, like you look back and you're embarrassed at the clothes that you wore. Like there are people that adults, like my parents' age, Well, I'm an adult too, obviously, but a bunch of older adults, like my parents' age, that if you go back and you look, I can tell you the type of person just by looking at their clothes, right? The people that are super, like that went hardcore into the 60s and the 70s, and they look absolutely ridiculous, versus the people that look like, yeah, you look like you were in the 60s or the 70s, but you don't really look like you were in the 60s and the 70s, right? It's the same thing that's going on now. And I'm not like dogging like fashion by any means, but this is a perfect representation of that. If you look at someone that exists right now, right, and you took a picture of them right now, and they were in jeans, a t-shirt, and boots, right? Jeans, white t-shirt, and boots, like classic. That's good old, like that's reliable. That's meat and potatoes, like high fashion, but like it looks good. Jeans, t-shirt, boot, always looks good, right? As long as they're like ironed and pressed and sharp, they look good. But if you have that same person, those t-shirts that like they're like dresses for men,
Yeah.
right?
The ones that have the dip.
Yeah, they're like they go down to here, so you could not wear pants and it's just like a man dress, right? Or the same thing with the shorts, right? Not the shorts, the pants, right? That's like a diaper, and then they get tight right here, but right here it's just all baggy, right? Which is a kind of a similar thing as like the MC Hammer parachute pants back in the 80s, which I really wanted a pair of those so badly whenever I was a kid. Thank God my parents had better judgment than me. But that's it. And in 10 years, are those people going to be wearing those things? No, right? It's fashion for the sake. And are those things attractive? Does anybody look good in those pants? If you weren't Justin Bieber or what's the Will Smith kid?
Jaden Smith.
Okay, those two people walk in this room with those pants on. Like it's acceptable because one of their celebrity status, and we expect them because whenever you become like a celebrity, then you are awarded like a great leeway, right? It's like only to a certain extent. It's like Johnny Depp. How old is Johnny Depp? No. He's in his 50s, approaching 60. And no 60-year-old man, no 50-year-old man, no 40-year-old man, no 30-year-old man needs to have 47 bracelets, 15 rings, 12 bandanas hanging out of his pants, and a chain that goes to his wallet down to his calf, and a huge hat tilted to the side. That takes and what that message is, right? What the message is with that is that, I don't care. I'm a rock and roll star. He's as an actor. I'm a rock and roll star. I don't care. I just rolled out of bed like this. It's just whatever. Wrong, right? You care more than anybody in this room put together, because that took you a long time to strap all those things to your body and to make sure that you have the perfect disheveled appearance. The thing is that that looks stupid. It looks so stupid, right? Because in 15 years or in 10 years or in 5 years, that's not a good look. Right, the same thing with the men with the super long shirts, or the pants, or the new way of like walking where it's like you're like I saw a thing with it was Jaden Smith and Justin Bieber together, and it's like it shows the evolution of man. You've seen like when man comes from an ape, and then he slowly like learns to walk erect, and it's like 8 images of man evolving, right? And if you look at like midway through man evolving from an ape to an actual human being that walks upright, then there's Will Smith's kid and Justin Bieber both, and they're doing this like hunched over thing where they do their face all weird, and they look exactly like the Neanderthal person that before we learned to walk erect. And that's a fashionable choice that they're making, but hopefully they will not be doing that when they're an adult or an early. Well, I guess they are early adults. So the type of person, right, that is going to change from year to year to year, or every 5 years, right? As opposed to, again, we're looking at houses. You guys are not of the housing generation quite yet. You're not at that point, so I'll get it over to fashion in a little bit that I know about fashion. But there are simple staples of fashion and what is considered classically okay to wear. That if you follow the same rules in the 50s, in the 60s, the 70s, 80s, 90s to this day, you'll be okay, right? Make sure that your clothes fit. They're not overly baggy or they're not ridiculously tight. Make sure that your shoes match your belt, match your watch. Like very, very simple stuff. That'll always see you through. And whenever you go off of, and those are based on that's based on symmetry, that's based on like sound, color, consistency, which is rooted in art and the importance of design. And you see that in structures, in housing structures, that there's a reason why certain structures last for hundreds and hundreds of years. Not only because they're well made, but also because they're beautiful and they don't need to be torn down, right? But there's something about us as Americans, as a society, we do not value that consistency. We do not value those classic aesthetics. We openly, if you look at a lot of the, it's amazing to watch, to get a glimpse of like the fashion and the style and all the stuff that goes on like through MTV. Like you know those people are going to be wearing those, right? In like 5 years, people aren't going to look like that. Like people will look like regular people, but those type of people are going to then jump to the next thing. And there's a lot of people like that, right? That jump from one thing to one thing to one thing to one thing to the other. Just like people that have, I've been lucky enough, I have friends, a large group of mine. I moved away from here when I was 17 years old, but I grew up with the same people I was friends with when I was 5 years old. I'm still friends with them now. I moved away from here when I was 17, and I didn't come back until I was in my late 20s. And even the 10 years that I was gone across the United States, overseas, they still remain my best friends. To this day, they're my best friends. And I've been very blessed with that. That's a choice that me and my group of friends have made, right? And not everybody has that, but not everybody is that lucky or that unfortunate. Depends how you see it. But there is a type of person that has a new group of friends or a new best friend every 2 years. And that's a person you want to look out for. And not someone you want to be your best friend or have you as their best friend, because they will drop you, because they have a history of that, because they jump from one thing to the other, to the other, to the other, from one person to the other, to the other. Whatever is fashionable, whatever is easy, whatever is in style at the time, and whatever suits their character, whatever suits their needs. Now, a home is not supposed to be like that, is it? A home, the home is, next to your marriage, the home is the largest financial investment that you will ever make, and it's the largest investment next to the choice of your spouse, and then your children or your family in general. Your home is your next largest investment emotionally, right? So that's why it's important for your home to represent who you are, for you to feel at home and in your home. But what if you don't know who you are? Well, then you'll want to change it, right? But the problem is that you built a home based on like fashion or based off of what your neighbors were doing, right? That's why you go to subdivisions, right? Each home, new home that's being built looks just like the other. Well, because people don't know what they want, people don't know who they are, and people in this country at least, a cultural problem, right, is that skipping from one thing to the other, to the other, to the other, and lacking consistency, lacking any sense of being authentic, lacking any sense of being genuine. Now, of course, this is not across the board. This is not everybody, but just generally speaking, right? Do we value authenticity? Do we value people that are genuine, that are constant? Or do we value things that are easily replaceable and that meet our immediate need, and then we go on to the next immediate thing, just like, pop music, right? I was talking about like Katy Perry and Christina Aguilera before that. The boy band thing. The boy band thing is perfect, right? Because like, that's been done. The boy band thing has been done, especially starting in the 80s, right? With New Kids on the Block, and then like Backstreet Boys and 98 Degrees and NSYNC and that whole thing. And then now you have a new generation, a new wave of those. And if you can switch out the beats and the music, but the lyrics are the same. Like, oh baby, baby, I love you. I'll never break your heart. I'll never make you cry. Whatever, right? Which is all lies in the first place. Because if you love somebody, you'll make them cry. It's just inevitable. Right? It's not even real. So we consistently recycle these things that are passing. So much so, if you look at fashion, because we get instead of houses, if you look at fashion, you see people going back to, now one of the huge movements in the United States is actually like tailored clothes, or people, especially like adults. Adults will spend, I spend quite a bit of money on my boots. I've got like several sets of boots that I'll buy boots like that I won't have to buy them again for 10 or 15 years because they're quality boots that are made in America. And and I know because I wear the same. I'll wear boots for the rest of my life. I buy a pair of boots and I wear them until I wear them out, and that usually takes like 5 to 10 years. And I know that because that's a quality investment that I will continue to wear because no one looks stupid wearing boots. Like you just don't. People have always worn them. They've always looked nice on guys, and so they always will continue to do so. But if I buy like some Yeezys and spend as much money on those, I don't think I'm going to be wearing those in like 10 years. I really don't. Thus the need for every season or every shoe season that comes out, every tennis shoe season that comes out, for there to be something that is new. Also, the fact that the things that are new are not being recycled. Starting around my generation, people are going back, and now generations now are not innovating anything much of their own, right? Much fashion is now borrowed from much older times. If you look at like hipster fashion, right? All that is borrowed from like early like Americana, early 1900s Americana with like suspenders, right? Suspenders and the really tight shirts, and and the mustaches are all kind of crazy, and the hats and like old school hats and stuff. The reliance back on the 70s fashion, not crazy 70s fashion, but like the kind of the old school 70s fashion. Each of younger generations that are coming up, instead of developing much of their own, kind of pulling back from the past, because the fashion that is developed now is so very temporary. So all of this stuff ties in together, right? Your home says a lot about you, and the choice of your home says a lot about you. And if you don't know who you are, odds are you're gonna buy a home that's based on whatever current trends that are surrounding you, based on everybody else's current trends. And so it kind of becomes a collective choice for something that's temporary, right? Because beauty is something that is classic. Someone someone that is beautiful or a pretty thing has pretty much always been a pretty thing in the time span of it's in the time span of civilization, right? So what it shows is a shift. Just looking at something like this shows a shift in what we value. Shows a shift in our lack of valuing identity, valuing consistency, and authenticity. Which again, that's a very, very large conversation, right? And he's not giving answers to this. I went into much more depth about this to unpack it for you than obviously he did. But there's more to it than just the surface, right? You need to ask yourself, okay, well, why does he talk about libido for the ugly? Okay, fine, he's talking about houses. Why is he talking about houses like that? What houses mean? How important are houses? Again, a lot of you guys, most of you guys, right? You're either co-enrolled or just right out of high school, so you probably don't have a house of your own, and so that would be something that would be a little more difficult for you to understand. But you do understand fashion, right? You don't want to be one of those people when you're 30 years old and you look back at whenever you were 25 years old and you were just like the people that do like the super emo goth thing. Do most people continue to do that whenever they're 30? No, and I'm not making fun of those people. I'm not making fun of them whatsoever. But you can obviously tell that that's a phase, right? When you see someone that goes through anything extreme like that, they don't know who they are, and hey, that's all the power to them because they're at least trying, right? They're trying to figure out who they are. I'm going to try this on, and I'm going to see if this speaks to who I am. No, that didn't work. I'm going to try this on. It speaks to who I am. I'll try that, right? So more power to you. But we consistently do that, right? And so we obviously see that with fashion, you see that with music, but you also see it in homes. And the kind of people that buy homes are not 15-year-old girls that are confused with their identity and they had a bad week, so they're going to go all black. Those are adults, right? And you see adults then doing the same cycle, right? This kitchen no longer speaks to me. I need to remodel it. Every 5 to 10 years, people remodel the kitchen. It's like, it really need to happen? No, it doesn't. Not if it's done, right? Because if you look at Europe and you look at the homes that are in Europe, again, those homes aren't being remodeled on a regular basis, right? And people live in those very same homes, and they pass down homes from generation to generation to generation to generation, and it speaks to a different mindset. So you use description here. The description here is used to highlight the ugliness of the houses because we obviously live in America. We are surrounded by our own type of houses, and so we don't really like think about it, right? Like it doesn't say there's not a lot there for us to really examine unless somebody else comes in and describes them differently than how we would see them. If you look at A Worn Path by Eudora Welty, you have description being used all throughout here. What is a worn path? A worn path means that it has been traveled on a time or two, right? Yes. Okay. So you have a worn path here, and you have a woman, and her name is. She has a red rag tied on her head. Her name is Phoenix Jackson, and she walks in the dark pine shadows, a pendulum of the grandfather's clock, a grave and persistent noise on the air, like the chirping of a solitary little bird. Okay, so a phoenix is what? It's a mythological bird. It's a mythological bird where that has enormous power and great strength, and as a fixed amount of time, every 500 years or every 1,000 years, whatever, depending on the story of the mythology, the phoenix spontaneously bursts into flames, and then it burns alive. And then from its ashes, the phoenix rises again. And when the phoenix rises from its own ashes, it becomes more powerful. And it goes through this horrific cycle for a specified period of time, constantly getting stronger and stronger and stronger. Thus, the power of the phoenix only gains in its strength. People use the phoenix metaphor for life, right? Or for struggle, trials, and tribulations, right? As you're going through, if you are going through this life and you have no trials or tribulations or struggles, then you will not get stronger. Just like anything physical. If you don't lift weights whatsoever, if you don't lift anything on more than your own body weight, you will not get stronger. If you start to do those things, then obviously your muscles are going to get sore. That is your body telling you to stop. It's going through trial, through pain. And then you go up, you wake up the next day, and then you lift more weight, and then you get stronger, right? You have a rough emotional time, whatever it is. You have your heart broken how do you have your heart broken for the first time, right? Do you go out, are you supposed to go out and date again, or are you supposed to be like a monk and celibate for the rest of your life? Yeah, thank you. You're going to be losers for the rest of your life. Come on. Go out and date again. 18 years old. Go out and date again. You go out, you date again, and you get your heart broken again, right? And bad things happen to you. You learn from those mistakes, and you go out, and you're like, I'm over it. You make yourself get over it, you work through it, and then you go out, and then you along the way, you become more emotionally strong. You find out more about yourself, and you also figure out what you will or will not tolerate in a relationship, and then you get a better relationship, right? Because you are a better person, because you're a stronger person. The mythology of the phoenix is a very powerful one in the use of the story, right? So obviously, the phoenix comes from fire and burns. She has a red rag tied to her head. Also, she, as herself, she's an old Negro woman. She is black. Obviously, it's the black skin with the red rag on her head. We looked before. We talked about the black stripes, right? And you look at the importance of the red against the black image, right? That's just red and black is a strong image together. And she here is walking in dark pine shadows. And dark pine shadows, the forest always represents danger and represents the unknown. So you have this old, elderly black lady. She walks in a pendulum of a grandfather clock, right? She's slowly kind of walking back and forth, tip, 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 with her cane, grave and persistent noise in the still air like the chirping of a solitary little bird. The phoenix, again, is a bird. But here you have like a solitary little bird. So like this old, decrepit, lady, black with the red fire, the flame, going down this worn path. She's gone down before, and she's going through this journey. Again, the red rag, and under the red rag, her hair came down her neck in the frailest of ringlets, still black and with an odor like copper. When something is burning, oftentimes gives off a coppery smell, right? And the phoenix themselves, a phoenix is red, and most of the time it's highlighted with like black feathers. And so you have this red rag on her head, and her little again ringlets like feathers that are black, and smells like she smells like she is on fire. And when a phoenix is on fire, again, it is about to burn into its own ashes, and then it again rises from those ashes. So she continues on. She says she feels like there are chains about my feet every time that I get this far. Old people keep use themselves. The woods are deep and still. The sun made pine needles almost too bright to look up. Where the wind rocked, the cones dipped as light as feathers. Down the hollow was the mourning dove. It was not too late for him. A lot of sensory details, a lot of tying in the imagery of a bird and the sun and the fire and all that stuff. That's it for today. We'll wrap this up, and you've got a brief writing assignment next class, and then the week after that we'll start our essay.